How can you immediately tell if a call you received is a scam call or not? Hi friend, how you doing? I hope you're having a great day so far. Let's talk about scam calls and some red flags that will indicate to you almost immediately if that call is a scam call or not. The first indication that a call is a scam call is that you did not request that call. It's unsolicited. It could be that it's from a company that you really use, some random company that you've never used before, or it could look like the number of a company that you do business with, you just didn't request the call. Yes, scammers can spoof numbers. And what does that mean? That means that they can make the number look like the real number of an actual company, but you never asked to be called by that company. That is the first red flag of how you can tell if a call is a real call or a scam call. The second red flag that you should look out for is that the person calling can't give you clear information about the company that they're calling from. The information might be incorrect. It might feel a little bit off kilter, and when you question them, they give you vague answers about the company. They give you the wrong address or a vague address, and they're not very specific. They can't give you a structured, constructive answer. They might veer off and try and change the topic. No clear info about the company or even their position within the company. The next biggest red flag is that they're asking you personal information. If it was the real company, they would already have that information. You would not have to give that information. A company calling you would inform you that they're going to call you, and they would probably already have that information. If somebody is asking you for phone numbers, addresses, identification numbers, that is really a red flag. Please do not give that information on any call if you did not call the company and you're 100% sure that you are speaking to someone from that company. Nowadays, companies have realized that this has been happening, and they have built in methods to pre-verify that this is you before you even speak to an agent. So be aware of this, and if something feels off, usually means it is off. So just be mindful of them asking you personal information that, one, maybe they should already know if you are a customer of theirs and they really work for the company, or two, that you should not have to give or makes you feel uncomfortable. The fourth red flag is that they're telling you a story that's outrageous. It just doesn't make sense within the normal day-to-day business of life. A very good example of this is the IRS scammer with a very strong Indian accent calling a police officer and telling her that they're going to come arrest her within 48 hours, and she has to pay money for that to be released. The fourth red flag, and one that is very, very glaring, but people so often miss it because it creates fear in them. And that's exactly what those scammers want. It's so absurd, it's scary, and it wouldn't happen in day to day life. An example of this is when my mom received a phone call telling her that her ID number and details were used on a parcel containing illicit substances and bank cards and invalid ID books going to India. Now, my mother has never even spoken to people that are involved in any situation like that. So it is so absurd that it creates panic and fear. That is exactly what those scammers want. So if it sounds strange, then put down the phone and rather call the real company, but better yet, go to the real company if there is a company. If in this situation, like my mother's, we went directly to the police station. And you know what? It was all a scam, because if it sounds too strange to be true, it probably is too strange to be true. Another part to this situation where it is so absurd and so strange is that they have so many details. They've already pre planned details, and they add on to these details little bits and parts of the truth. For another example is they had my mom's real name and ID number. They gave it to her, but they gave her the incorrect last name. Another thing about them giving strange information is this is not always the case, but it is very often the case that the person that they tell you they are and where they are from does not match up with what their accent sounds like or what you realize where they come from in the world. And this could be slightly controversial because it could seem like there's a bias towards somebody with a specific accent. Because very often, for example, my friends from China that I have met would use an English name to make it easier for me to interact with them and to be called a name that they are comfortable with. However, these scammers would use a name like John Smith or Tom Walsh or Marcus Andrews, but you can very clearly hear that the accent and the place that they say that they are from does not match with the story they're telling you or with what feels right. If it feels off to you that the person that they're saying they are does not match the voice that you're hearing on the phone, it might be a red flag. But also note that there are many, many companies that nowadays outsource their call centers. So somebody with an accent is not necessarily a scammer. It needs to be taken within the context that this story is strange, what you're telling me is feeling off, and I don't know about this. But just because somebody has an accent and an English name does not necessarily mean that they're a scammer. Remember, context matters. Another red flag that is really important to notice, but hard to notice in the moment, is that scammers like this will use that story to trigger emotion within you, because emotion is a powerful thing. See, think about a moment when you were having a fight with somebody and you said something that you normally wouldn't say, but you were so angry and you were feeling your feelings and you said something that you didn't mean. That same human reaction is what scammers will use against you. Not necessarily with anger. Anger is a strong emotion that they can use, but it's very often fear. Because if somebody can scare you, if they can trigger you to act out of fear, what's going to happen? They can control how you act. So if you recognize that you are feeling scared in a situation or something feels off and you feel like, hey, I just don't feel right. This story doesn't make sense and now I'm upset. I feel unsure. I'm scared. If ever that happens on a phone call, no matter whom you're talking to, this is your permission to hang up that phone. Because if you're acting out of emotion, your logical mind might not be active. And you might not be able to recognize that this is a scam. Because they've triggered your emotional mind and your logical mind is not there. Because emotion, for us humans, very often, not always, but very often, is a very, very powerful thing that can take over our minds and dictate, without us thinking about it, how we are going to act and how we are going to react. So be mindful. If somebody's telling you this weird story, you're feeling uneasy or even very panicked, or you're starting to feel very angry because of the whole situation that you find yourself in, then this is your permission to hang up that phone, because you're not going to act out of logic. So keep in mind that it is not always the case, but most of the time, if you look at the bigger picture, the strange story that they told you, trying to evoke emotion in you, so that they can control how you act. And with that goes isolation. They try to isolate you because when you're isolated and there's not somebody that can give outside perspective, they can control those emotions so much more. So if ever they say, oh, you can't speak to somebody else, a good example of this is, again, my mom. When they told her that, no, she can't speak to a lawyer, but he's a police officer, so he's telling her, no, she can't speak to her lawyer, he's trying to isolate her. But normally, if you're dealing with the police, rather tell them, I would like to speak to you with my lawyer present. That is always good practice and good advice that I could give to anyone. But remember, if they isolate you and they try and make you feel a specific way, if you're afraid, unsure, maybe even get somebody else in the room with you. The next red flag that is usually glaring at you, but when you are feeling emotional, you might not notice it as much, is they pressure you into acting now. It has to happen now. It can't wait till tomorrow. It can't wait till later. You have to give them the information that they want now. You have to go do whatever they're asking of you right now. And you have to stay on the phone with them while they're doing it. They pressure you to act immediately, and they might give you 100 reasons why, but it has to happen now. That is a very scary and important red flag to notice, and sometimes very easy to miss. The next very important red flag is that they will use threatening language. If you don't do what I say, this will happen. They try and intimidate you, they try to scare you. Because remember what I said earlier, if they can make you afraid, they can control you. And they can control the way that you act. So whenever you feel like somebody is threatening you, they say, I'm going to come arrest you right now. If you don't do this, we will immediately stop your service. If you don't install this software, you will be hacked, and hackers will immediately take over your computer. These are some examples, but if they threaten you with any bad thing that can happen, that usually indicates that that is a scam. And you should hang up the phone. The next glaring red flag is there's a lot of background noise, chitter chatter, movement, and sounds that you can hear in the background. A lot of call centers today use headsets similar to this one, which reduces noise coming into the microphone. And the microphone is right by your mouth. So that means that you won't pick up on the background noise. Now, scammers don't always have access to this kind of equipment, right? So they might have cheaper equipment, which will sound very noisy. The background is busy. Now, I want to preface this again with this is not always the case. There are some call centers where there might be some background noise, but be mindful within the situation that you find yourself in that this might not be right. Something is off. In today's day and age, telling whether a call is a scam call or not is getting harder and harder. But here's the reassurance that I can give you. If ever a call makes you feel uncomfortable, if something just doesn't feel right, trust your instinct. Trust your gut. Trust that your body is telling you something when you're feeling uncomfortable and your brain is saying, hey, something's not right here. I feel like I have to do this. I want to talk to somebody, but they're saying I can't. Hang up the phone. The moment you feel afraid on a phone call with somebody you don't know in a situation that you are not aware is safe, is real, hang up the phone. Because in all probability, it is probably a scam.